This is the Skoda Karoq. It's Skoda's first foray into the compact SUV segment since the ever-quirky Yeti back in 2009. Sadly, the Yeti is no longer with us, but Skoda promised a much more mature car with the Karoq. And if you think it looks similar to the Volkswagen Tiguan, you'd be right. Both are underpinned by the Volkswagen Group's MQB platform, but the Karoq is slightly shorter, slightly lower, but wider than the Tiguan. It also has a 40mm shorter wheelbase, so we'll see how that translates into passenger space later on. For Australia, the lineup of the Karoq is very simple, and what I mean by that is there's one model to choose from, the 110 TSI, powered by a 1.5-litre four-cylinder engine producing 110 kilowatts of power and 250 Nm of torque. That's routed through either a 6-speed manual or 7-speed DSG transmission, exclusively to the front wheels. The question that quite a few people might be asking is whether to buy this or to go for the Tiguan. Well, let's find out. Now I'm going to go all Doug Demure on you for a second and show you some of the little quirks that Skoda put in their cars to make living with it just that little bit easier. Let's start with the inbuilt bin. It clips directly on the driver's side and stores all your rubbish and prevents it from rolling around the cabin. Over in the cargo area, the boot light is removable and it doubles as a handy little torch, and because it's connected to the car, it'll always stay charged. And these little plastic corners have Velcro on the bottom, so they stick directly on the carpet liner. So smaller items such as our camera gear can be held in place. And what is easily my favorite feature in this entire car is a parking ticket holder. How many times have you been in that situation when you've tried to balance a parking ticket on your dashboard and when you shut the door it flips over, it slides down the bit at the front, all solved by a simple bit of plastic. Climbing on board, the dashboard design is very simple. There's nothing too crazy going on here, but there are some nice details such as these grab handles and a little storage cubby at the top. Visually, it's not as interesting as the new Mazda CX-5 or the Honda CR-V, but the benefit of a design like this is it should age well. And that's headlined by our upgraded 9.2-inch Columbus infotainment system. The base car gets an 8-inch unit, and our one has navigation, although both units get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, which is fantastic. So if you're not a fan of this, you can simply plug your compatible smartphone and you'll be on your way. All the audio sources you would expect to hear from AM, FM and DAB digital radio, and of course Bluetooth streaming. The interface as a whole is fairly simple and straightforward to use, although there can be times when it is counterintuitive. For instance, say you're in navigation and you want to change the radio station. Logic would predict you would press home, and that brings up some submenus. One is radio. When you click on it, it doesn't actually bring up the menu. You have to hit the far smaller radio text. And doing that whilst moving could be quite troublesome. I do have to commend the graphics on the display and the response times. Just have a look at these mode pictures. Just be reminded that because it is a touchscreen, when you do turn the car off, you'll be greeted with an art gallery of your own fingerprints. Below that are the climate controls, and they are dead easy to use. They're almost identical in every VW product, so nice clear dials for selecting the temperature, one for the driver and one for the front passenger, fan speed, and fan direction. We also get the heated seats, and the Qi wireless charging pad below. And it's quite a large surface, so your Samsung Note phones or your iPhone 8 Pluses shouldn't have an issue. Also a 12-volt power outlet and USB port. The shifter is a straight line from park all the way down to drive. Tap it once for sport mode and move it to the left for Tiptronic. Electronic parking brake. And the center console is a bit of a convertible space. Essentially, it's whatever you want it to be. So, you can have an armrest, 2 cup holders, and a place for the key. But if you don't want that, you can remove it to store larger, bulkier items. Or flip it over, and it becomes a 2-tier tray. So let's have a look at the back seats. In the back, one great plus is the amount of glass area. Even tall folk like me shouldn't be feeling claustrophobic. And the belt lines are also low, so children should be able to see outside. In terms of space, regular viewers will know I'm 6'3" or 190 centimeters. And I've got plenty of toe room, plenty of headroom, but knee room is where the 40mm shorter wheelbase begins to show. Because whilst I'd be okay sitting behind a shorter driver, I'm not sure anyone with legs would want to sit behind me. Now, you do get bottle holders in the doors and aircon vents as well. And I don't know why some manufacturers persist with giving screens in the back, because everyone has iPads nowadays. So Skoda has done the right thing and fit tablet holders as standard. The problem is, whilst you get holders, there are no rear USB outlets to keep them charged. There is only one 12-volt power outlet, which is pretty much redundant without an adapter. The seats themselves are very comfortable. You sit up higher than the front, which gives you a good view out, and there's decent thigh and lateral support. They can also do one more thing. Skoda's VarioFlex seating is a system that allows each seat to slide and recline individually. What really sets it apart is the fact that they can be flipped up and latched onto the front seats, and they can also be completely removed from the car. Just keep in mind, they are quite heavy. Oh. With all three seats removed, you've essentially got a small cargo van. Very impressive. There are a few ways to open the rear hatch. We have the electric tailgate with the virtual pedal, and if you use it, it works around 95% of the time, which is much better than some of the other systems I've tried. And once it's open, the space will depend on how the rear seats are arranged. If they're all the way back, as they are currently, there's 479 litres available. And pushed all the way to the front, that grows to 588 litres. Skoda's practicality wizardry extends through. You've already seen these Velcro squares and the LED light, but there are also 4 shopping bag hooks, and they slide independently on these 2 rails. The loading area is quite large and wide, so getting bulkier items in shouldn't be an issue, although getting them out again, you will have to lift it over this loading lip. Skoda also took a card out of Mazda's playbook and have hitched the cargo cover up directly on the hatch itself, which I think is the best solution. So when it's up, it gets out of your way, and when you close it, it returns back into its position automatically. And this being an electric tailgate, let's check for safety. Good, so it stops with minimal force. However, not all is perfect with the Karoq. Here's a few things. The brake pedal is set weirdly high. You have to lift your whole foot up and over in order to press it, and doing that over again in start-stop traffic could get annoying. The infotainment system being purely touch mean that these preset keys can be difficult to hit whilst you're moving. The lack of a volume knob also doesn't help. And notice that they didn't swap it around when converting the vehicle to right-hand drive, so they're out of reach for the driver without leaning forwards. The recesses for the cup holders aren't very deep, so for smaller water bottles like this, you won't be having much luck. Behind the wheel, there's one word to describe the driving experience, and that is, well, fine. It handles and steers exactly how you would expect it to, and in typical VW Group fashion, the steering feel is muted, so there's not that much feedback. But it's not too over-assisted, as the electric power steering firms up at higher speeds, and when parking, you could turn the wheel with the pinky if you wanted to. With a 1.5 turbo 4-cylinder engine, the Karoq pulls well in the low to mid-range, with 110 kilowatts of power and 250 Nm of torque available from 1500 RPM. That means the 0 to 100 sprint is done in 8.4 seconds. The only letdown is this DSG gearbox. This isn't a problem just for the Karoq, as any DSG-equipped car will suffer the same low-speed response. Sometimes it'll stay in first gear, so the slightest prod of the throttle throws you back in your seat. And sometimes it'll shift to third when I'm only doing 25. So if I need to dart into a gap in traffic, by the time the car responds, it'll be too late. This is amplified by the fact that the Karoq is a turbo, and therefore will be susceptible to turbo lag. Over time, you do learn to adjust your driving style to suit it, but I feel a car should really adapt to you. The Karoq's European suspension tune makes it very compliant over our poorer roads. Bumps are absorbed without much fuss, and the car remains controlled over rougher surfaces. For a vehicle in the mid-30k price category, NVH levels are also very good. Wind and tire noise are kept to a minimum, which makes longer journeys less tiresome. The Karoq is a great motorway cruiser. A fun party piece is this self-parking feature. It automatically detects when you are trying to park perpendicular or parallel, and it worked every single time. The issue that I usually have with these systems is that they are too complicated and only prove to be a gimmick. But the Karoq is straightforward. It's also not too slow, which means that you might actually use it, unlike some other systems. I tend to take car makers' slogans very seriously. If you're going to put something right below your logo, you'd better mean it. Skoda's is simply clever, and I think you've seen that the Karoq is just that. If you can drive a stick shift, that would be my pick, and for just over 30k drive away, it's a solid deal.